So, several fandom Facebook groups have been posting about a recent podcast with a PR publicist out in LA, I believe. And it was quite an interesting stream because it was about this thing around inside arranged relationships. And this has been something that has its roots in the studio system in LA, where they would arrange marriages for Rock Hudson, Tab Hunter, because they wanted to protect their assets, which is like actors are like assets to the studios. They don't have the studio system anymore, but they're like property. And back then, y- a heartthrob like Rock Hudson or Tab Hunter, the amount of commercial value that they held, appearing heteronormative, was very high. And so the studios went through great lengths to keep that image because of the revenue that it generated. So it's an interesting concept in practice because it's still happening. Like I could see why this was a thing back when being LGBTQ plus was a crime. I could totally see it. But since that's not a thing anymore, it makes you wonder, right? So how does this industry practice of closeting, it, how does it actually directly relate to why fans have been speaking for over a decade and a half, pretty much, about setting Larry Stylinson free? Now, we all know about Lance Bass. We all know about Jordan Knight. We all know about Ricky Martin. They came out, they didn't come out right away, but they came out later. And both Jordan Knight, both Lance Bass have said that they were pressured to maintain a straight image because if they didn't, it could ruin not just them, but the lives of their best friends, their bandmates. So, contractual love, closeting, not a conspiracy. So it's something that's easily dismissed and also believed very fiercely. This idea that some celebrity relationships are not real, that they are orchestrated by managers, PR teams, and there's a whole media plan around promoting this ship. The thing is, the paradox is with Larry Stylinson, it was like a counter move by modest management, by Psycho Records to really separate Louis and Harry. But it did the opposite. The opposite effect happened where the fans kept it going. So, in the absence of a media plan and a media plan to push a heteronormative image, Larry Stylinson is one of the true survivors of it, of resisting the closet. Let's see. So, the podcast episode was on a show called The Quickie, and it featured a Hollywood publicist and a celebrity lawyer who openly admitted crafting these PR relationships. And they don't whisper it, they don't imply it, they say it directly. So one of the quotes was, "Yes, we've created romantic storylines for clients. Yes, we've signed legal agreements. Yes, some couples were bound together for at least a year on paper." So it's not about gossip, it's about these patterns and structures in the in the entertainment machine that is the reason why many fans, especially those in the Larry Stylinson fandom, do not say the closeting is a theory. It is a thing. So, well, what is the premise of the closet? Well, the contract is a closet. So, Hollywood publicists, lawyers have confirmed that love contracts exist. It's not new. We've seen it with actors, pop stars, reality TV winners. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's subtle. So, what does it mean for artists like Louis and Harry? Why do some fans say Larry's real? And more importantly, why do they believe it to have been hidden? Well, now we kind of have the language. These contracts are not just image polish, they're a form of narrative container. They force a public storyline while suppressing the truth. It's not a theory, it's basically a PR strategy. So when fans say closeting, they don't they don't just mean not out. They mean deliberately misrepresented, often through these legally binding contracts. So, what is this? What is the why behind the lie? Well, why does it happen? Well, because perception still sells, because branding matters, because market viability still coded with heteronormativity. A boy band survival once depended on one thing: every girl believing he might be into her. So if one of them was in a same sex relationship, that was not just inconvenient, that was a liability to exploit or bury. And if two of them were together, that wasn't just private, that was strategically dangerous. So why do management companies do? What do they do? Well, they invent decoys. They assign female love interests. They lock in contracts with NDAs, and they put pressure on everyone to play along. Sound dramatic? Not anymore. Not when celebrity lawyers and PR handlers are now admitting it on record. So the clues we weren't supposed to notice. So in the Quickie podcast episode, both of the guests talk about the signs that fans should look for. Zero chemistry in public. No casual paps shots unless staged. Excessively controlled press. Romantic timelines that seem too convenient. PR rollouts that coincide with tour launches, legal drama, or other narratives. Does this sound familiar? Larry fans have been dissecting this for over a decade. And what used to be dismissed as delusion is now aligning with what industry insiders are quietly confirming: that some relationships were never about love. They were about contracts, optics, and silence. So if it was real, it had to be hidden. Well, and here's where it gets serious. So let's assume, okay, let's play devil's advocate. I am a Larry, but let's be objective. Let's assume that this is all hypothetical, that Harry and Louis were in a relationship, a real one, right? During their rise to fame. What would the industry have done? They would have hidden it. Look of a global sensation One Direction was. They would have separated them. Notice how Louis had Eleanor, steady girlfriend, 10 years, quote unquote. They would have created female partners. I just said that. They would have buried interviews, erased footage, redirected the narrative. That's why there's only like one interview with Harry and Louis together in Paris, very beginning of One Direction, where it's like a 20-minute interview in a Paris apartment, and they're really having fun. You don't ever see that again. That like they're interviewed together, but not just on their own without the other boys. Unless I'm wrong. So if I'm wrong, someone tell me. But the Paris one stands out very, very kind of stark, right, compared to like the later interviews. So, and what would Harry and Louis have done? Well, what anyone under contract, management oversight, or industry pressure would do, they would say nothing, or worse, they would deny everything. Not because they didn't care about each other, but because they had no choice. Remember, Harry was only 16. Louis just turned 18. Think how young that is. So when your entire life is monetized and scrutinized, safety comes before truth. So why does all this matter? Because closeting is not some fan fiction trope. It is an operational reality in Hollywood. And the Inside the Arranged Relationships episode confirmed that from people who wrote the contracts themselves. They confirmed it. So when fans point to odd body language, strange PR stunts, or unnatural pairings, Louisa, they're not inventing a drama. They're recognizing a system. And that system kind of has some receipts now. So closure is not always exposure. So this is not about exposing anyone. It's not about proving any relationships. If we were really looking at all this hypothetically, it's kind of about defending the possibility that what the Larry Stylinson fandoms have seen and tracks for years was not fantasy. It was a suppressed truth. It did not take me very long to become a Larry, and I am not a teenage girl. Kind of sometimes wish I was 16 again, have all my natural collagen back. But anyway, I just purely on body language and those glances and those early X Factor House video diaries and just the collection that they have that has been saved and people have reposted. That alone was like, yeah, there's something going on there. And I did not know there was a term for this. I didn't know Larry Stylinson was a thing. I just literally was watching going, hey, hold on a second. Because like the algorithm sent me to Harry and Louis stuff. But I didn't quite cue in. Wait a minute, Larry Stylinson. Oh, wait, that's a ship name. But I was already like looking and thinking, these two were together. Um, there's micro expressions. If there's people that study micro expressions, so if you, it's like if you can find somebody who is trained to read micro expressions and have them just watch the interactions without sound, I'm willing to bet money that a lot of people like that would agree with me and probably be Larry's. So if it was a suppressed truth, then maybe now the fans can speak that truth gently, not to scandalize, but to validate. Because whether or not it's ever proven by these two that Larry is real, what is real is this system that made them impossible, has made many, many unions probably impossible. Because closeting is not a theory, it's actually a tactic. And and one with legal backing, with commercial intent and at a human cost. And then, maybe, just maybe, the fans who knew that all along deserve a little, if not a lot of credit for seeing through the most powerful PR machine of all. So that is that was a really timely episode because it happened kind of like the same week that you have, or actually no, it was last week, but kind of on the heels of Louis basically saying he's going to take a break from social media and the Larrys being unfairly, blamed for it when he did not call them out. He called out hurtful things that people do, whether they're a Larry or not. So, what do you think? I mean, the studio system was notorious for a lot of this, like a lot of staged photo ops, a lot of planted interviews where the was like a soft, sort of like a soft Q&A where the reporter was really just doing PR, not really doing a serious interview, and with the intention that they would be helping sort of push a narrative about a particular celebrity being a certain type of way. So personally, if everyone says this, that Elton John quote, how if a rumor continues and it persists, it's not a rumor, because in the face of all this denial, management tactics, all these media strategies to push a heteronormative frame, especially around Harry, Larry Stylinson survived brilliantly and beautifully so. Now, there's body, the ability to read body language is not codified, last I checked. But you don't need to be an expert in body language to kind of know that there's not a lot of chemistry in Louisa. There wasn't all that much chemistry with Eleanor. And between Taylor Swift and Olivia Wilde, Harry just sort of, there was always sort of a certain sort of, not reticence, very subtle. But when you see the naturalness of Harry and Louis, it's a lot of this is in the early videos. It's undeniable. It's so undeniable. There's so many photos of them kind of making these little hearts with their hands. Harry sitting on Louis' lap, and these gestures. So, one time, two times, like there's the joking around, but when they never did it with the other boys, that's kind of where you start to look and go, wait, hold on a second. So, do I know if Larry's real? No, I don't know. Everything's speculative. But what I will say is mirroring, like I always say this, the mirroring that these two do, even when they weren't looking at each other, that you cannot fake. Because they never mirrored this way with the other boys. The other boys didn't mirror this way with each other. It was only Harry and Louis that could mirror like this. So, you know what? For that you cannot fake is the truth.